Am I crazy, or should the Smirnov story end the Republican Party? I mean, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
This should be a much bigger deal than kind of what I'm seeing in the mainstream press once again.
You're certainly not crazy. I mean, you may be, but not in this way. You know, I feel like
Thank you.
we all need some kind of pills to take to live with the situation.
You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
It's insane, right? I mean, he even has a great name, Smirnoff, right? Like, it's already a good brand to be talking about.
Standard left turn ahead. Spanish? Va a la izquierda allá. Yakov Smirnov. In Soviet Russia, car drives you.
I was just going to say, this guy's surrounded by Russian intelligence officials who are feeding him disinformation to then feed to the Republican Party. And now it's all out there. The Republican Party either willingly accepted the disinformation or stupidly accepted the disinformation. I think either explanation is equally damning, don't you think?
Of course. I mean, either we've got a couple of morons running things, which we know we do. I mean, James Comer and Jim Jordan are like guys that you kind of feel like should be sitting in a padded room with you know, like, I mean, I always go back to the Ruprecht example, like not have forks to stab in their own eyes, or, you know, maybe not let them near animal feces because they might start playing in it.
Hold on 1 second. This isn't that show where monkeys throw poop at show business people, is it?
What? Huh? No.
I don't.
Right.
They're morons and whatever, but they're obviously people in such bad faith. You know, I think about, I read this report and this is going to answer all of these questions. I read this report, I feel like it was in Financial Times. I need to find it. I tweeted about it earlier. They talked about an analysis that had been done of the EU right before the Russian invasion of Crimea, in the actual few years leading up to it. And it found various transfers of money to EU officials, to officials elected in their own countries, to the EU body, and to reporters. And I'm honestly getting to a point, I mean, look, we all know that either he's just a pathetic, self-loathing loser, which he is, or he's being bought off also, but that Glenn Greenwald is in the tank, right? And Jimmy Dore is in the tank. And we know a bunch of these folks on the left, Tucker Carlson on the right, and I mean, who started on the left, wherever they all are anymore, they're Putinist apologists at this point. Because Roger Waters is clearly in the tank for Putin and has been. And you have all these figures like that. And we know these guys, I mean, not that Roger Waters would need to be bought off. He's just a idiot. Because if they're not still making money off Dark Side of the Moon, then he's got some serious problems. But they've bought off. I think we're naive, right? And I remember I had Malcolm Nance on my show at one point when I used to do a podcast, some other folks, and I used to say, how can we believe that only Trump has been bought off, right? At that time, Kevin McCarthy had made that comment to Paul Ryan when he thought nobody was listening, that there's two people I think Putin pays: Rohrabacher, you know, who's a congressman, a Republican congressman at the time, and Trump.
He begins by saying, I'll guarantee you that's what it is. The Russians hacked the DNC and got the op research that they had on Trump. And then McCarthy laughs. McCarthy then adds, there's two people I think Putin pays, Rohrabacher and Trump. There's then laughter by some of the lawmakers in the room, and then McCarthy adds, swear to God.
And the fact to only believe it was those two, when Ron Paul, you know, for years, had, in his newsletters or whatever else, had been praising them, said, let him go into Crimea. Ron Paul's campaign manager, a guy by the name of Jesse Benton, who also managed Rand Paul's campaigns, got arrested. I know this will shock you, and is married into the family. I think he's married to Rand Paul's niece, I want to say. He got arrested for funneling Russian money to Trump and got a sentence for it. Nobody talks about this. We never hear about this. Somebody that close to Rand and Ron Paul and to Trump. Trump pardoned him, of course, because Trump was president at the time. We don't talk about George Santos and the fact that what was his name, Intrader, who was a cousin of Viktor Veckelsberg, a Russian oligarch closely tied to Putin, Russian American in trader, so he can get away with donating money.
Adding to the mountain of controversy surrounding New York Congressman George Santos, a new report from the Washington Post alleges the embattled lawmaker has significant ties to the family of a sanctioned Russian oligarch.
This is the loophole they've used. This is what Obama talked about in the State of the Union when that dumb Alito shook his head about foreign money coming in.
Last week, the Supreme Court reversed a century of law that I believe will open the floodgates for special interests, including foreign corporations, to spend without limit in our elections.
Mike Johnson, an American-owned company, so they were able to do it, but it isn't American-owned. It was an American company, 88% owned by Russians, including, he was also Maria Butina's handler, this guy.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And he helped fund Mike Johnson. I mean, when you start looking at all this stuff, when you say, why isn't this the biggest story? Yeah.
But this incident, your capture, is embarrassing.
Because if you look at the context of Donald Trump and Paul Manafort and Gates, the huge number of the meetings they took in Trump Tower, all the stuff we know from 2016 and on, the bowing before Putin in Helsinki, and all the different ways. But then Rand Paul going and delivering a letter to he's a errand boy for Trump to deliver a letter to them, because clearly Rand Paul, as John McCain once said, and I just did a video about, was the senator for Vladimir Putin. That's what McCain's words, that he was so anti-NATO.
So I repeat again, the senator from Kentucky is now working for Vladimir Putin.
We've got Mike Lee and others in that same boat.
As the world rallies around Ukraine, Mike Lee was one of only 2 senators to oppose sanctions on Putin. Then he flew to the Kremlin and discussed dropping sanctions.
And now you see this, Comer and Jim Jordan literally laundering Russian talking points, and the whole Hunter Biden Burisma thing is all bullshit. But a lot of people have now heard it a million times over and will believe it. And you just say to yourself at what point, how is this not the biggest story in the history of civilization?